Hello lovely ones. This is a Galactic Mayan astrology report for Sunday the 19th of July 2026. It's the first time that I've done an intro like that for many years and it feels really exciting. So I am going to run through the energy that is going to be beaming down into our human experience from the 19th of July for 13 days. And that energy is going to take us through the Galactic New Year portal, and I'll share many things about that. But before we do, dun dun dun, the 10th edition of the Galactic Mayan Astrological Diary that I've been creating for many years is now live. Now, many people come to me and they're like, how do I get to know the Dreamspell? How do I understand the Galactic Mayan calendar? And my answer is and has always been personal experience, because this whole framework of time is really directly related to synchronicity. And the thing that we know about synchronicity is that it is innately personal, right? So, okay, you can go and learn about the archetypes, you can Google them, you can be like, oh yeah, but actually how that archetype manifests for you is a completely different thing to how it manifests for me. And the way that we then work with this framework, it's all about evolution, baby. It's all about receiving the energy of the archetype and then utilising it to support us to evolve. So in here, you have an explanation of the Galactic Mayan waves and all the archetypes and all the tones. And then every 13 days, you get a little poem introduction to the Wavespell, which is the energy that we're going to be exploring in this video. And then you get a page a day to write about your experiences. And then at the end of that 13 days, you have a page to reflect upon your experiences. So it basically breaks our 9-month human evolution cycle into 13-day processes that we then get to reflect on and evolve through. And that goes all the way through. It also works with the 13 moons. It's fantastic, it's wonderful. The link will be in the description of the video. And alongside that, I'm very excited, SYNCHRONISE is a course that I am hosting, a temple container that I'm hosting, that takes us from the 21st of July, which is the day after, 2 days after this Wavespell begins, through Mary Magdalene's feast day, through the day out of time, through the Galactic New Year. And the intention of the container is to utilise the energy that's there. So we're going to meet for 5 live calls, ceremonies that are all recorded. And, you know, one of the things that we'll be journeying is, you know, moving through sensuality in our bodies and how we awaken our bodies, and then a death ceremony as we let go of the old, a refresh on what it is that we've gathered this year before we then reboot and restart into conscious alignment with the energy of the new year. So again, the information for that is in the description. So without further ado, here we are. So on the 19th of July, we move into a 13-day process with the archetype of the white wind. What is the white wind, I hear you ask? So within the 260-day framework, down there, I'm not going to take it off my altar because I had loads of stuff fall off it the other day because it's all a bit precariously balanced. But we have this 260-day cycle, which is a grid, which is essentially the human gestation period. And this particular 13-day process begins on day 222. So already it's got its own like cosmic magic within that. But the white wind is really about our self-expression. So I guess to begin with, the thing that comes through the white wind is about our voice, you know, and our relationship to our voice, and what does it mean to have a voice, you know? A big thing about the throat chakra when we're looking at it through the chakra lens is that it is about, you know, the expression of self. So, you know, we kind of move through the root, the sacral, the solar plexus, the heart. So we've got like the grounded into the earth and the fact that we're a creature. Then we've got like our sexuality and our creativity. Then we've got our power, you know, our feelings of how empowered we feel within reality. We've got our heart, which is the connection to all, you know, it's where we meet the horizontal. And then we've got the throat. So the throat is the expression of all of that, but then also our third eye, you know, our ability to tune into the psychic realms and understand things from that out of time perspective. And then the crown, which is, you know, the connection to the infinite and up from there. So the throat in relation to all of that, you know, self-expression of all of that. And, you know, we've got the ability to speak is a part of that. So where are we speaking from? That's one of the inquiries of, you know, the white wind. And there's so many layers to our being. Like I've just listed the chakras, but then we've got all of the layers of our energy fields which are connected. But, you know, we've kind of got this ancestral element to our being, to our energy field, which has got all the stories of our families and our culture. And how are we expressing from there? How clean is that? And all these different elements of us, the different parts of us, right? So the expression will sound different, and it's not that there's like one voice that comes through us and that's the true voice and all the rest is bullshit. It's about looking at it with curiosity. So, you know, for instance, I'm from the north of England. A lot of my family, you know, well, I've kind of come from the working class of Northern England. And that means that, you know, I can banter. And if I was to sit and have a conversation, like we had some people come and look at our car, like a mechanic, and I can vibe with that with ease. But it's not the way that I'd kind of sit and talk to, I don't know, what would be another example? If I was in a conference and I was sort of stood up talking about children's rights, I'd be speaking from a different part of myself, but it's still all from me. So that's kind of it in the clean way. But then what we're looking at within the Dreamspell and in Galactic Mayan astrology is like, how do we clean up the bits that are wonky? How do we, because at this point in humanity, this place that we're at, and you know, Carl Jung has been such a pioneer for the revelation of where we're at in terms of collective evolution. But at this point, you know, we're really holding that awareness of like, okay, we have conscious self and we have unconscious self. And in the unconscious, in the shadow, is all the stuff that we couldn't process at the time. And then we had to like build around, we had to morph around. And it's not just our stuff, it's, you know, our family, our community, the whole collective of humanity. So when we are leaning into this idea of self-expression from a place of like conscious and unconscious, that's really where the juice comes. So curiously exploring like, okay, so in terms of my comfort level, you know, what makes me anxious in terms of communication? What people, what places, what situations? That's where to look. That's where to look, and not looking in a critical way, looking in a curious way. So, okay, I can comfortably be in these places, but in that situation I'm not so comfortable. And, you know, I think I mentioned it in the last video that I shared about, you know, the upcoming year. Or maybe it was when I was doing a video about the Dreamspell, but either way, you know, I think this idea of communication is very interesting. And like my personal journey with communication was, you know, I was very cut from my self-expression and my ability to, or my survival need was that I needed to please, which I know is a really common thread for a lot of us. But it was so fucking strong that I didn't even know. And this is the beauty of the conscious unconscious framework, right? It's like I didn't realise what my needs were. I didn't realise what I wanted because I was just in survival, please, go, 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 go. And I spent so many years of my life in that and got, you know, very exploited and had all the juicy learning that comes with it. And then I landed in a different space. And then in that space, I was like, yep, I know what my needs are. I feel that I can communicate my needs and communicate my boundaries. And it's like, yeah, the end of the line. No, no, no. Because from there, it's then like, okay, and then the other person. Because communication and self-expression isn't just about the transmitting out, it's the receiving in. So I then really struggled to receive the other, and the space that my nervous system would go into, it wasn't like a cognitive, like, I don't want to listen to what they've got to say vibe. It was a, I'm in paralysing panic and fear about this potential conflict. So I'd rather just say my piece and then that be it. And it's been a really big learning journey to recognise, like, oh no, the receiving of the other is really important. And I think one of the biggest nuggets that I kind of took from the past few years of like journeying with this theme, you know, we don't have to do the conscious evolution journey with everybody that we've ever met. We don't have to be best mates with everybody that we've ever met. But if we feel that we want to express something to another, we have to then do the giving and the receiving. You don't have to express anything. You don't have to step into the arena with that person. But if you do, you've then set in motion this exchange, and to then abandon that exchange is to like start a process and not finish it. So in terms of like relational self-expression, reflecting on that, you know, like, okay, are there things that I'm not confronting that keep coming up? Or have I half confronted something that hasn't been completed? Or, you know, how, and we don't have to go back into situations from the past and try and restore them, but it's about how do we integrate that learning, how do we do it differently now? So that's one element. I guess you've got the kind of conflict resolution element of White Wind, but then we've also got this like art element. You know, our creativity is really held within the self-expression. You know, we've kind of got the sacral where it all bubbles, but then if our throat isn't allowing that out, we've just got all this bubbling. So an element of it is about being seen, because it's fucking vulnerable to be in your creative self. It's really vulnerable to put your art into the world. It's really vulnerable to be seen in that way. So in terms of, you know, where am I at in terms of my creativity? Where am I at in terms of my art being witnessed? And again, it's not about like shoving anything. It's about the inquiry and the curiosity. Like, why am I creating that thing that nobody's ever seen? Or why does it make me want to hide? Or equally, you know, if you do put something out and then it doesn't receive the feedback that you would most desire, what then happens? You know, it's like looking at all these different pieces of like, interesting, and then, you know, dropping deeper into all those layers that we talked about of like, so what's underneath it, and then, you know, you will find some kind of nugget as you descend through the process, which is always the way. There'll be a nugget there, you know, whether it's a personal experience that you had when you were a kid, or some kind of like rule in your family or rule in your culture, or, you know, all these things that we kind of take on as thought forms. And I think one of the really beautiful, again, aspects of the idea of the subconscious that I love is this idea of like thought forms. So it's a structure in our subconscious realm. So we've got this like massive realm that we exist within that we can't perceive all the time. But every time we've taken something in, that's a structure, but it's just a form. And when we can identify like, oh, there's a form there that I've kind of been running my human experience through, I find that helps me to hold it with a greater softness. There's like a gentleness that I can approach it with when I feel it as a form, as opposed to something that's like, oh, I'm like changed to this idea and it makes me feel really scared. But then meeting all of those places with that compassion. And again, I think this is something that we need more than ever, and primarily with ourselves. Like, when we have that with ourselves, then we can have it with each other, but until we've got it with ourselves, we can't. You know, it's a performance-based compassion if it's simply about the other, or it's coming from a really wonky place. And that was another big revelation of mine recently, of like, fucking hell, the amount of times that I used to just think that I was like giving, but actually it was from this place of like terror and like, you know, total self-abandonment. You know, it wasn't like, oh, I'm considering my needs and I'm considering the other needs and then I'm giving. It was from a place of like, I'm not considering my needs at all, I'm just focused on the other because that's helping me to dissociate from my own needs. So we've got this element of self-expression in terms of relationship, we've got our creativity, you know, we've got the exploration of what's in the way and why. And the beauty of the white wind, you know, it's about this idea of like channeling spirit. So channeling, you know, channeling the oneness, channeling the all. And, you know, I think when we, and I've always really felt this, you know, all the years that I was sort of teaching Reiki and moving through these different spaces where we were gridding into multidimensional reality, which is, you know, still the place that I exist, whether I'm kind of holding space for others in that capacity or not. But just that, like, ensuring that our intention is to be, if we are opening to, you know, the world beyond, ensuring that we are using our intention really sharply and precisely to be channeling from love, you know, channeling from the space beyond duality. Because, you know, even in dimensions that are higher than the dimension that we exist in as a collective right now, it's still duality, it's still polarity, it's still agendered, it's still, you know, there's vibes in it. Whereas when we're in the oneness, there is no more polarity. So for us to be anchoring into love and then opening our channel, you know, we're ensuring that what we're bringing through is clean for us and for others too. So this is also a really beautiful time to kind of be exploring our channeling. But the beauty of this wave spell, this particular cycle, is that it is carrying us through this new year portal. So in the Galactic Mayan framework, we work with a 13 moon yearly cycle, and we also work with the 9-month 260-day cycle, and they're on top of each other. So each cycle begins at a different time. But because we've got this 13 moon yearly cycle, that always begins on the 26th of July. And the reason that it begins on the 26th of July, and you can have a look at one of my other videos that I posted about what's coming for this new galactic year, that date is always anchored into the calendar because it's about Sirius and the rising of Sirius, the spiritual sun, the rebirth of the spiritual sun. And that's when, you know, the ancient Maya and Kemet, Egypt, all celebrated, you know, the new year, the new cycle. So when we're anchoring into like, hey, it's new year at that time, we're anchoring into that ancient awareness, we're anchoring into those moments or pockets of humanity where we were really operating in a multidimensional capacity. And, you know, I really feel and I always have really felt the power of, you know, where are we choosing to anchor? So again, like that idea of thought forms that exists, you know, in a collective sense too. So if we're swinging into like, hey, it's new year on the 1st of January, and I'm not saying don't lean into that too, but the vibration of that and the intention of that and the creation of that is a certain frequency. The new year being on the 26th of July, ooh, that's a different frequency, that's a different intention. That thought form and all of the human experience that has been built around that thought form is coming from a very different space. And then us attuning to that, we're then in alignment with it, and then we're receiving from that. So this idea of self-expression, this process of us exploring our self-expression, exploring this white wind energy, carrying us through this new year portal, is a really profound thing because it's setting us up. So we're entering this energy of the red galactic moon, which is the vibe of the new year. As like I say, I've done a video about it, so if you want to know about that, I'll put it in the comments or the description. So we're entering this moment of like, okay, we're moving into the red moon, we're moving into the ability to flow with life and move out of rigidity and control so that we can really surrender to, you know, the cosmic code. As we are entering into that new cycle as a collective, we're also exploring this idea of our self-expression. And I think, you know, exploring self-expression and digging down into like what's in the way of my journey, true self-expression. What's in the way? What are the fears there? Holding that process as we move through this portal into the new galactic year is such a beautiful setup, as is Synchronize, this course that I'm going to be doing, and we're going to really integrate all of this wisdom into that. So I hope you have the most delightful 13-day process, a beautiful entrance into the new galactic year, and as I say, get your diary, come on Synchronize, it's going to be magical. I'll put all the links in the description so that you can drop into that, and I'll see you on the flip side of this new year portal.